Hi, thanks for jumping into the Weekend Rewind, rewinding to yesterday's conversation on the Talk the Walk live stream with Alan Weiss, talking about the glory of ambiguity and why clarity is overrated. Enjoy the listen. Alan was really fired up. This is really fun, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Talk the walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversation swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going.
Where's our applause music? G'day, Alan.
Good evening, Leanne.
How's it all going today? How's your afternoon?
Going well. I got into the pool 4 straight days here. Yesterday was 102, but today we're going to get into some rain, so a little foggy and overcast, but can't complain. Can't complain.
That's good. I mean, I've got the heater on here, but it's not even that cold. I just am I guess a cold person. And anything exciting happened during the week?
Anything exciting happened during the week? I would say that I put together the plans to go to Portugal in April
Wow.
with one of our growth cycle groups, and so we're going to go to Porto and to Lisbon. But my granddaughter, one of my twin granddaughters, is in Kenya in a village an hour away from Nairobi, and there was rioting in Nairobi. I woke up this morning and I saw it in the New York Times. They're protesting some kind of tax increase. So I got on the horn to my daughter, who's here, and she's been in touch with her by phone. And they're not the group running this says everything is safe. It's a normal day there, but they're not going to tell the kids about Nairobi. My concern is that when they come home in a few days, the roads may be blocked, or God knows why the airport closed.
Yeah.
And they ask the parents not to reveal to their kids, because they'll have phones, what's going on, so they won't get upset. But I've never seen anything like this where you really kept a secret. Some parent's going to tell the kid, who's then going to tell the other kids.
Yeah.
So,
and if they've got phones as well, I mean,
really.
Oh, that's kind of alarming, isn't it? That's a tough thing to navigate.
It's the way the world is, and it's too bad. But apparently everything will be fine, and she'll be home in a week, and then we're all going to go out and celebrate a belated Father's Day, because Gabby, who went to Kenya, and Elena, the two twins, they have such a good time at Father's Day, which I'm happy about. We go to a special restaurant that she wanted to delay it until she got back. So
that's nice. You get like a month of Father's Day celebrations.
Yeah.
And Father's Day. Fantastic. Yeah. If you're joining us, let us know where you're joining us from and maybe what's been a highlight for you this week. I'm trying to think of last week was pretty eventful. I was basically camping out the whole week. I ran my retreat, but I also did a CEO sleep out. That's to raise funds for homelessness. So I think I raised over $6,000 and our team collectively over $1 million.
Well, good for you. You slept in a box, didn't you?
Slept on a cardboard box. I didn't sleep at all. Lights went out at 11 p.m. and I was basically just like waiting. The gates opened at 5 o'clock in the morning. So just looking at my watch until the gates opened. Came back home, did a proposal and some other things. But yeah. Anyway, today's topic is the glory of ambiguity. Actually, I've got this image. My friend, I love that phrase, clarity is overrated. And my friend Jade, I was like, can you turn this into something that looks pretty cool? And she created this image. She gives it 1 star. What do you give clarity, Alan?
Well, clarity is overrated, because the pursuit of being clear, you'll never be completely clear. One of my coaching clients wrote a book on clarity, and she hadn't talked to me for 2 years. She hadn't invested in me in 2 years. But she writes a book on clarity, and then she comes to me then and says, would you give me a testimonial for the back cover, because, she wanted to use my brand, frankly. So I said, okay. And I said to her, my only demands for these things is that it must be on the back cover because of my brand. I don't want to be inside with 40 other testimonials. No problem. So, of course, the book comes out and I'm not on the back cover. I guess she wasn't very clear about that, right, in her book on clarity. So
yeah,
let me tell you about ambiguity. Ambiguity to me is being open to more than one interpretation for events. It's not swimming through some fog. It's not wondering what's going on. It's being open to more than one interpretation and not having to have a clear road. In other words, you realize there are a lot of good options. And a lot of times we create our own ambiguity. I have overwhelm. I have writer's block. I don't know which way to turn. Oh, stop it. So I think ambiguity is a good thing. It forces us to make decisions. I mean, when's the last time you felt you were in an ambiguous situation?
I'm always in ambiguous
There we
situations,
go.
constantly. Like, even I get a nice, someone reached out about this idea of working with them, and, you're like, "That's ambiguity right there." I'm like, "Oh, what's the best way that I could help out?" And, like, that, even before this live stream, I'm just like, having a little coffee and thinking, "How would I help?" And that's kind of, it's fun to problem solve. Um, but, I guess when I first started my business, I would have, like, prepackaged solutions, or, this is the brochure for the program. But I actually like having to think about, what we're doing. I've got a really fun, opportunity with a client, a few directors. They wanna basically travel, have an adventure, and also work with me and do some business processes. So the ambiguity we're facing now is, they're in Perth, I'm in Brisbane. Where do we meet up in Australia? So we're thinking, do we go to the centre? Do we go to Uluru? Do we go? That's a fun ambiguous challenge. So ambiguity can be kind of positive for sure.
Look, every time you walk into an airport, you're in ambiguity. You don't know if you're going to pass through security or not. They might find something. You don't know if your plane's going to be on time. You don't know if your seat will recline or not. You're not sure if the food will be any good. You're not sure if you'll make a connection. I mean, you have to live with ambiguity. Ambiguity is like having a plan B. I mean, you need to back things up just in case.
Mm.
But you need to make decisions. The trouble with people who perceive ambiguity is they're indecisive. I mean, the very last day Eisenhower could have launched D-Day, 1 million people storming the beaches in France.
Mm.
The first 3 days, no good. Weather was no good, and the tides were important. So the final day, the last window, the weatherman told him it's a 50-50 bet, which is what weathermen say today anyway, which is why they're never fired, right?
Yeah.
So so Eisenhower thinks about this and says, like, I can't take all these troops back. The Germans will fight. Charge. Let's go.
Whoa.
This is what happens when you think you know things that you don't. At Gettysburg, which was the most important battle in the American Civil War, and consequently maybe the most important battle in history, because the North winning the Civil War changed the world. Lee was facing Meade at Gettysburg, this famous battle, and it's very ambiguous, right? There's smoke. It's a long lines, tens of thousands of soldiers, and Lee thinks he's weakened in the Union middle. He doesn't really know, but he thinks he has. He's pretty sure. And so he sends Pickett's charge because he thinks there's just militia, weak troops over there. And instead, it was the Union Second Corps, the best corps in the Union Army. Pickett's charge was decimated. Lee retreats, and the war changes.
Yeah.
So it's better to be in ambiguity and say, I got to, get through here, than to think you know more than you do. And that's why clarity is overrated.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, and sometimes when I sometimes call it constructive delusion. It's like, you don't have enough information at hand, and so you make a decision to do something, and which requires you to back yourself and pull resources in to make it happen. And you don't want to know all the details sometimes, particularly if you're working. I mean, writing a book, you kind of don't want to know all the details. Like when I worked on your book sprint, we weren't tackling the book. It was like every week you're just going to do one, take one step, like write the outline, then get a chapter, then build upon it. As opposed to, like, and you talked about overwhelm before. I'm hearing this word. It is used more than the word awesome, I would say right now. The amount of overwhelm in the world. Why do you think that's happening?
Listen, I think it's happening because people feel powerless. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
And I think the truth is that um, people feel that things are out of control. They feel they have no power, no control, when the point is they have a lot more control than they think, and they're not giving themselves permission to use it. And so it's easier to say, oh, God, I'm just overwhelmed with all this stuff. Pick something and do it and shut up. Nobody wants to listen to a whiner. I'm not inclined to give free help to anyone, much less whiners. And so get a grip on your life. And trying to blame external sources is eschewing accountability.
Mm.
So that's where we're stuck. And I think that you're right about the frequency of the word being used. In fact, it's awesome how much overwhelm is used.
It is awesome. And then another word there is amazing. Just a shout out to Andrew Hollow, who was talking about that the other day. Yeah. So I think, I mean, how do we then? Is it all about just taking sort of micro steps? And you talked about the analogy of the fog, and there is fog, but you're just taking a series of unsteady steps in a certain direction. Is that what it's all about?
Let me tell you something. Early in my career, when I wrote one of my first 3 or 4 books, I came upon this concept, which I called the ambiguous zone. And here's what it means. There's today and there's the future. Now, so far, I know this is a conceptual breakthrough, but I think people can probably come along. So we have, I know I've trademarked this. So we have today and we have the future. And people think that people are afraid of change and they're afraid of the future. They're not. What they're afraid of is the journey, because the journey is ambiguous. And that's the ambiguous zone. So
Yeah.
if you want to get from here to there, there's this ambiguous zone in the middle, and great leaders take people through it. Fred Smith just passed away a couple of days ago, founded FedEx. The company became a verb because Smith was one of the greatest business leaders I've ever seen.
Mm.
And he said, yeah, hub and spoke will beat the post office, guaranteed absolutely the next day. They said, nobody's ever done that. Yeah, I can do it. How are you going to do this? I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. But in ambiguity, you make decisions. You don't wait for the perfect decision. You make decisions. And if they're wrong, then you're resilient. You make different decisions. But you don't fall back. You don't retreat. You don't wait for the fog to clear, because what you're doing is creating fog.
Yeah. You're creating fog when you don't make a decision.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. When you sit in place, you're just breathing your own exhaust. You only get fresh air if you move.
That is so good. And what about because we work with clients and they're trying to reach an outcome, and they're often the question is say yeah, we're gonna work together, we're gonna create this outcome, and then the next question is, how will you do that? There's a certain point where it's like, okay, we've established the future, but we're actually in the ambiguous zone now. So how do you respond to that question when clients say, how will you do that? Because you don't really know at the time. There's certain things you could do, but you don't know.
I usually say to the client, I don't know, how would you do it? And the client says, well, you're the consultant. That's why you're here. I said, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. You know widgets because that's what you manufacture. And I know consulting. So leave it to me. I'll get there. But to say to you right now, I know how to do it, means that you're an idiot. It means that you've been sitting here for a year and couldn't solve it. But I respect you too much for that. I don't think you're an idiot. I think you're an intelligent business person. That's why you're talking to me. So I'm not going to walk in here and tell you how to do it.
That's so good.
I
Yeah,
am
that's
good.
right.
I
And
am
if you
good.
had that is really good, because if you had a prepackaged solution, I mean, yeah, you just be like, "Hey, here's it on a platter," and you execute it. But we're living in ambiguity, right? So you don't know.
Yeah, and to say, I
Yeah.
mean, even doctors don't say, "What's wrong?" "Well, it hurts back here." "Oh, I know what that is. That's the arthritis." Even doctors don't do that. They ask questions. They diagnose. That's what good consultants do. They diagnose.
Mm,
Then you
mm.
can get prescriptive later once you know what the real cause is.
Yeah.
And I think the cause of people fearing ambiguity is they fear their own ability to make decisions because they're afraid of rejection and failure and critique and all this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, wow. We'll talk about that in a second. I just want to say hello to Marianne, MK, that's joining us from Leanne in Brisbane. Great to have you here, MK. Let us know where you're joining us from and what questions you have about ambiguity. You spoke about, this whole thing around it's the other side, what you might face once you make that decision. There's also this thing in business around if you make a decision and it fails, you kind of have to justify to the business why you made that decision in the moment. And so I think that also creates some fear is did I get enough data? Did I consult enough people? There seems to be, and I think with didn't you work with Merck and you did an award like the best idea that failed?
That was
There's
for Calgon. The best idea
I'm
that didn't
sorry.
work. Which
Yeah.
another, I think it was Joseph Epstein wrote an interesting line. He said, "Some shores are set aside for shipwreck." And what he meant by that
Mm,
is that no matter what you do and how good you are, sometimes you're going to fail. External sources, misjudgments, who knows what, but you're going to fail. If failure is a part of life, failure is a part of winning. If you're not failing, you're not trying. So
mm,
we can't fear failure, or we're never going to take even prudent risk.
mm.
So with the situation you described before, something doesn't work, it fails, and people look for blame. They look for a
Yep.
scapegoat. But
Mm,
what we should look for is cause and find out why it failed, and what we can learn from that for the future. That's the human condition. If you
Mm,
look at Edison, he had, I don't know, a couple of thousand patents probably, but he had tens of thousands of rejections. That's the way it works.
yeah. Um, I think you're right about like that's why people like that culture of there is a scapegoat and we'll point fingers, and obviously you don't want to create that as a culture. But as a solopreneur, it's really up to you. And so you guess you're pointing the finger at yourself, or you look, but you have to put things out there. And I work with so many people that like, oh, I want to do this project, I want to write this book, and even myself, I want to put out this offer, and it's all in your head and you're thinking about it. You're on the hesitation station, is what I call it. I see the work that you do, Alan. I don't know. I guess there's another story that comes to mind. I think you were, I don't know what it was, but you needed some income or something. You had to pay for something. And so you just created an offer to start your growth cycle mastermind, and you just put an email out and you made the money like same day,
I
something
did
like
it in
that.
I was in Sydney, Australia, and I
Yes.
I talked to my wife by phone, and she said we need $35,000 for whatever it was. I forget.
Yeah.
And now I could have sat there and said, where should we take it from? But instead, I was getting on a whatever that was, a 12, 14-hour flight. And so on Qantas, I sat down and I spent about an hour creating a workshop. And I then sent that to my tech team from the plane. And in the next 10 hours of the flight, whatever it was, they got it up immediately. I made over $30,000. So you can't
That's thirty
hesitate.
thousand dollars plane trip. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I make money overnight. So do you. And
Mm.
and so the issue is that uh, every time we hesitate, we cripple ourselves. Every time we hesitate, we put on restrainers. And I think that we have to be bold and not fear. Uh,
Mm.
you can't fear this critic who's, metaphorically on our shoulder, whispering in our ear, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And so that just creates more fear of ambiguity. I don't think ambiguity is anything to be afraid of. I think you can take advantage of it because so many people are not. They're all huddled together.
I
And so you
agree.
say, hey, look, there's no normal. There's no return to normal. There's no normal. There's no normal. Get used to it. And they say, okay, let's listen to this guy.
Yeah, there's no normal. In fact, I think we all realize that now. And what's fascinating is a lot of people talk about, oh, we've got this change project or this transformation project. But I don't think that's actually even, I think it's an oxymoron. It's like the whole business is change. Like the whole project is change. It's not, these are not isolated things. We are all in the business of change right now.
Yeah, and anybody who
Yeah.
says people resist change is crazy. We change every day. We change if we see traffic, we change our route to get wherever we're going. If we don't like the food, we ask to have it changed if we have any confidence and so on.
Yeah.
Hey, Marianne here called me the OG of rainmaking. Does that mean original God? What does that mean, OG?
Original gangster.
Oh,
Uh, Original God isn't too bad. You can trademark that. The OG of rain. I love that.
thank
And Dee
you.
Dee's here. Dee Dee says, "G'day from California. Great to have you here, both of you. And if you let us know where you're joining us from and what questions you have as well." I heard a podcast on Diary of CEO. I think he was talking to the author of the Personal MBA, Josh Kaufman. At the end of the chat, Josh said this line, and I was like, "Oh, this is good." And he said, "We tend to conflate clarity with competence.
Yeah,
We tend to
yeah.
think they're the same thing." Yeah. What do you think about that?
My thing is exactly right.
Mm,
Somebody could look, you and I and everybody listening here has had professors who were crystal clear on history or on science or on philosophy, and they were deadly dull. They were not successful at educating the people in front of them.
mm.
And so clarity and ability, clarity and competence aren't necessarily the same. I think you need some clarity, if you're if you're an airline pilot.
Yes.
But
Yes.
what you need clarity on is not the skies because you got instruments taking care of that. The clarity you need is what to do in an exception, what to do if an engine fails, what to do if a buzzer goes off or a light flashes. So, but you
Mm.
could call that clarity, but I would call it education and reaction. When Shelley
Yeah.
Sullenberger, whatever his name is, landed that U.S. Air jet in the Hudson River in New York because he sucked
Yeah.
geese into the engines. He wasn't real clear on what he had to do. He just knew instinctually he had to get that plane down. He didn't
Mm.
go, okay, what's the protocol for geese and engines over the Hudson River? And the tower is telling him to try to get back to the airport. So I think that there's a correlation, Leanne, between being being comfortable in ambiguity uh, and and being confident and being
Agree.
prepared.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, because people talk about luck. Hey, it came to me. He was lucky. It was ambiguous. He wasn't lucky. The harder you work and the more confident you are, the luckier you get.
Agree. Yeah, and it's also that sort of mindset that whatever comes my way, I believe that I will get through it no matter what. Like I have that faith in myself and ability to, yeah, find the resources, make it happen. Um,
I say this all the time, but my father jumped in New Guinea from 500 feet from cargo planes into enemy guns.
yeah, that's exactly. Like, what are we so scared about?
Right? He
You
didn't
know what?
say, "Hey, listen, night pilot, head for that tree over there. I'll have better protection." You know,
G'day, Louise is also in Brisbane. She's actually just down the road from me. Louise shares, there is no normal. Yes. Hey, you know what I think about ambiguity as well? And why, I guess, let's talk about consultants now, why we fear it is because we've got experience solving specific problems and, we've got that process of doing it. We're very confident in how that will happen. And I think there's a lot of people that are attached to what they created, their prepackaged programs. Now, as things shift, there's a demand for you to shift. And again, that can create that ambiguity that you're talking about where you're like, okay, we're solving new problems. So it really comes back to what you said before around confidence. But I still
look at
see, I guess, a
it.
lot of consultants that are just sticking to what they've always done and just try and,
That's
and then
right.
complaining that they're not winning any business.
You're right. I mean, but look at AI. People are sitting around waiting for someone to tell them exactly what's going to happen.
Mm,
Nobody's going to tell them that.
yeah.
Somebody said, "Oh my God, AI made mistakes." Of course, it made mistakes. There's no perfection. And so, I want to establish three things before we end, and it's these.
Mm,
If you want to be successful despite ambiguity, the first thing is you need always to be prepared with a plan B if something doesn't go the way you thought it would.
mm.
So always a contingent action, if you will. The second thing is you have to be an extremely flexible person. You can't be rigid. You can't be doctrinaire. You got to be flexible. You got to be like, who was it? Gumby, I think. Gumby was.
Gumby.
Yeah. And the third thing is what we've alluded to, and that is you have to abandon the search for perfection. It ain't going to happen, and it's not necessarily good. Next to clarity, perfectionism is overrated too. So
Yeah.
if you can do those three things, you have those three things, you'll be fine. And you can stop worrying about this vague fear that we have.
Yeah. So on that note, like, what does being ready actually mean? I just wanted to show that image again because I loved it. And thanks for making me laugh by mentioning Gumby, by the way. But like, let's talk about readiness then, because that's probably the key skill here. Or like the ability to pivot, to keep your eyes open and then to charge in a new direction.
Well, readiness is not an on-off switch. It's a rheostat, and you can't turn it up too far because people
Ah.
over-prepare for a speech, and when they get up there, they're not good anymore. They've exhausted their energy. They're past
Mm.
their peak. People prepare too much to love a vacation, and they're going to go here, here, and there, and they run around so much trying to see everything with bucket lists and other stupid things that they don't really enjoy any vacation. In fact, so many people are more focused on taking selfies and photos that they're not quite sure where they've been. They just know they have pictures of where they've been.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
we have to be comfortable. We have to be in the moment, and we have to stop assigning arbitrary fear to things like uncertainty and ambiguity and what will they think of me. I mean, who the hell cares?
Mm. But that's the whole back to fearlessness. Like, and even this has come up in your forums as well. Like when, every week I send a newsletter, people unsubscribe. And I would say it's only this year that I'm like, that's totally fine. But it used to kind of like, oh, what am I, there's like that tug of like, oh, why did they unsubscribe? What did I do wrong in that message? And I'm fine now. I don't even really look at that. But like, that's a sort of micro symptom.
It's terrible. It's horrible. I mean,
Terrible.
people.
It's so silly.
I,
It's so dumb.
I don't even know how to do this. When people tell me they can tell how many people open their newsletter
Mm.
and how many people open their newsletter and were eating cereal for breakfast. I mean, who the hell cares? Uh, I don't care. You want to unsubscribe? I don't care. You know, some guy said, I'm going to unsubscribe because I didn't like your last article. I said, let me understand. You're trying to threaten me by unsubscribing from a free newsletter. I'm not exactly intimidated, right? So, do you know Randy Gage from the National Speakers
I
Association?
don't know.
Okay. So Randy and I are buddies, and we used to see each other a lot because I was facilitating a group he was in. But Randy and I would accidentally once over a drink agreed on this. If every day we are not pissing someone off, we are not doing our job.
Well, I think you've just done that today, Alan. Congratulations by just by saying that. I'm sure someone's like, if we're not pissing someone off. Yeah, I think the founder of Dermalogica said the same thing. Like, we want to piss off 80%, so we get the 20% that just love us. She said that in an interview. Just you aren't, because I think you're vanilla, right? If you're not kind of agitating or provoking, and it's not about being just doing it deliberately to annoy people, but it's actually having a stand and taking a point of view.
Yeah, I don't do it deliberately to annoy people,
No.
but I don't care if I wind up annoying people because I'm saying something I don't like. I am not here for affection. I'm here for respect. You want to like me, okay, but I don't demand it. But you want to work with me, you want to follow me, you better respect what I do, even if you don't agree with some of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the narrower your focus, the more you have an agenda, the more you're going to wind up being ticked off because a lot of things people say don't fit your agenda.
Yeah. So good. Hey, I've got a question for you. Like, so going back to the client situation. So say you're running a strategy day or, multi-day strategy day. The client wants an agenda. How, again, you navigate that by saying, why do you want the agenda? Because things can be, you can have, like, I guess, certain elements, but strategy by its nature is emergent, just to call out Dr. Jason Fox, one of my colleagues. And so you don't know if you're going to spend 30 minutes on this part and 60 minutes on this part and get an outcome every time. What would you say to that?
All right, so you're the buyer and you just asked me that. And I would say, well, Leanne, we're going to spend the first part of the morning defining what strategy is and is not, so we all have a common language. The second thing we're going to do is introduce the 4 key steps of strategy so people have a sense of sequence. And then the next thing we'll do is go through those 4 steps. And at the end of the day, we'll have accountabilities for people to go out and start implementing.
Okay,
That's
nice.
the agenda.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's a smart way of phrasing it. You've done
Now,
this before, Alan. You've done this before.
The first part might take 20 minutes and the third part might take 3 hours. But
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not, just because of what you said, I'm not telling you what the time frames are.
No, exactly. I had this question here and I wanted to just call it out because I think I think this is actually a thing. I think people, like, is clarity just a socially acceptable form of procrastination? I put that there as a question. I think it's a statement. I do think people, like, and I'm not judging anyone else. Like, I definitely do it too. Like, oh, I need more information, but it seems to be socially acceptable to say that I just need more clarity to not do the thing. Do you
I think
witness
you're
that?
exactly right. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a form of
Yeah.
avoidance, which is procrastination. And if
Yes.
you Googled clarity on Amazon, you'd probably come up with, 100 books, and not many of them will be clear.
No, that's funny. So any sort of final words that you want to share? I mean, I've got a lot of more questions I can ask you, but I know this has gone really fast for some reason today. Like, it's just, I mean, it does fly every time, but well, I guess even jumping on a live stream with you is ambiguous. Big time.
That's true. Because I'm the original gangster.
You are the original. You're going to use that from now on. You're going to craft an offer off the back of what Marianne just said about you, aren't you? The original gangster offer.
I might replace the rock star of consulting with the original gangster. I really like that very much. I was unaware of that.
The
I'll
OG
tell
of
you.
consulting. But you are. You are.
What were you asking me? Do I have any final comments?
Well, I don't even know what I was asking you. No, it was just more of a
Well,
comment.
ambiguous.
Any sort of final, like, I guess messages of encouragement to people that are on the hesitation station or just like, yeah, aren't doing what they want to do, aren't fulfilling what they think they can do.
People were very clear that if you went in the water within an hour of eating, you'd get cramps and you drown. They were very clear on this, and I was brought up that way. However, it's completely false. There's no truth to it whatsoever. So I would tell you that even things you're very positive of, even things you think you're very clear about, you're really not. because you
Mm.
don't know the whole story. All you can do is act on the best information you have. Some of it will be hazy and foggy and unclear, but the great leaders, the Fred Smiths and the Herb Kelleher's and the Steve Steve Apple, I nearly called him. uh, these are the people who were fearless and who thrived in ambiguity.
Yeah.
And so Steve Jobs was there. He left. He changed his mind. And it can get you in trouble. He had pancreatic cancer, I believe, and he went for a holistic
Mm.
kind of remedy to it, and it homeopathic remedy to it, and it didn't work, and he probably died before he should have. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I mean, that's who he was. And so, be bold, like you said, be fearless.
Yeah, be fearless. Love it. I do have that actually, I have that printed on a shirt, one of your quotes, no guilt, no peer, no fear. And then I think in Vegas, we said that the final line is, "You're lucky I'm here." Kind of have that type of energy as well. Marianne's laughing. She loves that you're taking the OG. Hey, Alan, as always, it's been great talking the walk with you. And thank you for joining us
Trixie,
today. If you've watched us live or on the stream, and we'll be back in your feeds in, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks. We'll set a date. Watch out for that. But cheers to you. Thanks again.
have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.